David Watson continues his conversation with Bridget Plass and is joined by the former Bishop of Salisbury, George Reindorp, who during this programme reveals that his faith is also being tested by the recent discovery that his wife, Alix, has a serious brain disorder.
Those of you who were with us last night will have already met David Watson and know that in January he was told that he'd got cancer. What you were saying yesterday, David, had a profound effect on me, and I think particularly in the area of... I've been going through how I would felt myself and how I would possibly have told my children. Now, admittedly, they're much younger than yours,
How old
but
are
I know
yours,
yours
David?
are only...
14 and 16, a boy age 14, a girl age 16.
Yes.
How did you do that, David? It must have been so hard.
Yes, it wasn't easy. I'd like to know what maybe, George, what you would do in my place, but what I did, and I'd love you to come in on this one, I went back home and saw my wife, and of course the children were there too, and my wife said, "How do you get on with the doctor?" I said, "Well, I think I've got to have an operation."
Just like that?
Yes.
They were there when you said
Yes.
that? Yes.
And so they said, "Why?" And I said, "I got an ulcer."
Yeah.
My son was puzzled because he suffers a bit from mouth ulcers and couldn't see why if I had an ulcer I need an operation, you know.
Yes.
And anyway, Anne, my wife, I think wisely said to the children, you know, go off and watch television, we just want to have a little chat. My wife was a nurse who trained at Guy's, and of course nurses read a lot into it, you know, and so she knew much more than I did, actually.
Yes.
I didn't think, actually, anything was terribly seriously wrong. I thought it was just a kind of a scare, but she knew it at once. My children, I didn't tell my son, who's away at school, all that much, because I thought it would really upset him, just the sheer uncertainty of it all.
Yes.
He just knew Daddy's going into hospital for an operation on an ulcer.
Yeah.
Didn't sound too threatening. My daughter, 16, is much sort of older and therefore slightly more shrewd, anyway, lives at home, was very anxious, obviously, but I just told her that the operation could be a little serious, but I'm sure all would be well. And we had to tell them a little bit at a time, as much as we feel they could take. She found visiting hospital was difficult. She doesn't like hospitals anyway, and many children don't, I think. But she did come eventually when I was a little bit sort of better and on the mend. But it was...
But the difficulty, sorry, George,
No,
the difficulty for your children must be that, whereas if nobody knew who you were, nobody would be talking about it. I mean, you have made it very public. You have talked about it. I know you made a radio programme about it. You've talked about the fact that you are facing death, so there's no way, presumably, that they've been protected.
It was very difficult because the church press wanted 1 or 2 bulletins of how I was getting on.
I was just going to ask that very thing, there's a press.
And therefore we had to be very guarded as to what we said, so A, it would be accurate and help perhaps some people to pray for me, and B, not too frightening, not only for my 2 children, but my 82-year-old mother, you see.
Oh, yes.
And that was tricky too.
I should say
Are they secure enough in their own knowledge of God loving them to be able to accept the possibility?
I'm sure that they believe in God and sort of belong to him, but at that kind of age you ask a lot of searching questions, don't you? And if God's God, and I'm going around telling people how to find God.
Exactly. No, exactly. Well, what sort of God is this?
What sort of God is it? That's Daddy, you know.
Yes,
But George, how do you
well, I
break the
mean,
news to children?
you know, of course, we've, as the others know, I've had to tell the children, of course, mine have grown up. You know, first some were away, and I had to write from abroad to say that there'd been this brain scan, and then I had to tell them that she's going probably permanently, which is now the fact. And I think at that age, all one can do is simply state the facts boldly, so they don't feel or conceal anything.
Right.
And each one of them takes it in their own. My only daughter, I've got 3 sons and a daughter, who she's the one the umbilical cord is strongest, and she's furthest away up in Liverpool. But I think in each case they were kind enough to say afterwards that we told them the whole truth. You see, and Mummy being a doctor, they thought, well, you know, it's probably as bad as Daddy thinks. Daddy's a bit of a dramatist. And then not feel that you're being, you know, saying nice things or that it's going to be better than it really is, and she's got to face the fact. But it all happened so suddenly that as just with you, because it affects other people, not you yourself.
Quite,
you see.
But George, I know with you that, I mean, there were some moments when you almost wondered whether God was real at all. I mean, David, did you ever, in the lonely hours of the morning, did you ever wonder if not about the nature of God, whether he was loving, but, you know, whether he existed at all.
Yes, I did have this... I literally broke out in a cold sweat at times. I mean, I remember once or twice waking up in the morning with my pyjamas just wringing wet with sweat. Because in the middle of the night, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it's always the lowest point, I was asking myself very basic questions, that if I'm shortly on my way to heaven, how real is heaven?
Yes.
And is there really a God? How sure am I about these things? I preach them, you know.
Yes.
I was absolutely sort of staggered that I was going right the way back to square one about one's basic beliefs. Fortunately, I had worked through these questions sufficiently, so they didn't last all that long. But I found I had real severe doubts and agonies of mind as to actually what was going to happen in the future. I came back to the fact of Christ, the fact of his resurrection, of which I was really very convinced.
And David, have the children asked more questions? I mean, as they realise, face what is actually happening, have they asked questions about what you think of heaven, or where you're going, or what your attitude? Or have they just kept it to themselves?
No, kept it a bit to themselves. I think that they would like to know, are you healed?
Yes.
Or are you not? And I can't give any answer. I'm right in the sort of
The middle
not knowing stage, really.
Yes.
But what would you say, David, to other people? You know, we have a lot of people who watch us who are going through all sorts of awful things. I mean, what would you say to them to do in the early hours? I mean, when they can't, when it's difficult to pray.
Yes. I found actually reading the Psalms incredibly helpful if somebody has a,
I'm
you know,
so glad you said
because the
that.
psalmist has
Yes,
every conceivable mood. So Lord, you know, where are you? You know, why did you answer our prayers?
From
And
out of the depths.
That's
Yes,
right.
that's it.
It comes through to restful assurance that God ultimately is in control, that God does love, that God does care, in spite of all the apparent